You're listening to the Games User Research Book Podcast, a show that explores the world of user experience research in video games. My name is Leonard Nacker, and together with my co-hosts Anders Drachen and Pershman Mirza Babai, we edited the book on games user research. This podcast covers pretty much everything we couldn't fit into the book. Find out more about us on gerbook.com or grab the book from Oxford University Press.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Games User Research Book Podcast. Today we'll be talking about things to consider when you want to be a games user researcher. I am Anders Drachen, and with me are my esteemed co-hosts Leonard Nacker and Petsman Mirza Babai. Petsman, as far as I recall, you were just at the GROC Summit, the games experience and user research. Games you are some, right? Talking about how to support students in games user research, based on a collaboration with Ubisoft. Can you tell us something about what the main conclusions from the partnership were?
Cool. Hi everyone. Happy to be recording another episode for our Games User Research Book Podcast. Yes, Anders, as you mentioned, just last week we had the Games User Research Summit 2022, and I had a presentation there around academic industry partnership with Ahmed from Ubisoft Toronto, where we talked about the recent program that we are basically partnering and co-running together on helping students or recent graduates to get into basically user research domain. There were a number of motivation obviously behind that partnership and the talk that we gave. I think the main one is kind of one of our, as a group, as a community, we always talk about wanting to have a more inclusive industry. And we know that there are multiple factors contribute to that, but one of the key factors is to have more trained and educated people who can do that job. So that was one of our biggest motivation, to help more graduates, more students to have a competitive CV when they apply for user research positions. And one challenge is, in that sense, is many programs out there, either a game program or a traditional computer science program or psychology program, where they all, as we know, like user research is the interdisciplinary field, so they all kind of contribute to that. But usually they could be quite general and focus on those kind of a general topic on computer science or on game design or development or psychology, and there are usually not much opportunities or material focused on games user research in most undergraduate programs. So we thought we could create a program. At the moment, it's very small, but hopefully more universities and industry partners may adopt the setup to try to provide the training more specific to games user research. And that there are two angles to that. One is obviously the materials, the knowledge, the skills, to learn. But the other component of it is to practice those learning on real project. And that's where Ubisoft involvements come in, because they basically provide trainees with industry-related basically projects, and then also mentor them to provide them with feedback, with guidance to, as they work on these projects and as they prepare their deliveries. As well as funding. So I think that's one of the other unique feature of that program. Is the funding that we provide to make sure that experience is funded, so trainees won't have to find something else on the side while they are working on this the training program.
So you mentioned a couple of different variables here. You talk about different types of degrees, computer science, psychology, etc. You also talk about the competitive CV, and you talk about working with industry during your degree work. To begin with, let me ask you guys, so what type of degree should I have as an aspiring games user researcher?
Nora, do you want to take that, or do you want me to add my thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is always a hot debate. Should I have a degree?
Yeah.
Should I not have a degree to go into that field? I honestly think it's possible for anyone to learn the stuff without a degree. The only problem that you have is, the field formalizes and people looking for credentials that actually show that you've acquired the knowledge necessary to excel in these areas, that degrees are absolutely important. And specifically in games user research, you will find a lot of people with an advanced degree. So that means they have gone and done a PhD in psychology, or they actually have a degree in HCI or in design, or even anthropology. Sometimes you get some people with critical media skills and these types of things. And I do think, if anything, it just shows you that this person has done structured research in a form and a field that still has research in its name and being a large part of the bread and butter every day that people are doing there. It is important to know how to do good user research, and you learn that nowhere better than at a university in a degree program. So I do think that's important. I do think there's a lot of opportunities there. But again, I don't want to say that if you're completely passionate about this, that it's completely impossible to work your way into that. It is absolutely, it's absolutely possible to acquire that same knowledge through hard work and honing your skills in a way that allows you to become knowledgeable about people, to be super curious. I think that's the most important trait, curious people. You want that curiosity about why are people doing stuff? Why are people engaging with things? I think that's the most important character trait that you can foster as a user researcher, is curiosity about life, curiosity about people, understanding why they engage in these behaviors. So that's really key. But like you said, a degree, I think, does help. It does help formalize these things. It does have putting things in perspective. On the other hand, you also have to keep in mind that a degree is no guarantee. You can have people that are not curious, but they have a user research degree, and they might make really not excellent user researchers. That does happen too. People have different motivations to go to university, different motivations to do academic degrees. Ideally, you want somebody that is doing that degree because it helps them further their knowledge in that specific area. But sometimes that's just not the case, and then it's not a guarantee. I think it's something that helps. And if you as an individual are thinking, should I do this for myself? Absolutely, you should. It will help you grow. It will help you get the skills. But is it a guarantee from the industry side? If I was the industry partner, is it a guarantee that if I hire a P something that they automatically will be great researchers? Absolutely not. I don't think that's the case.
True.
I think you said it very nicely, Leonard. The part I want to emphasize, because I get many emails from people who are trying to get into user research, and I see sometimes there are concerns. For example, they say they don't have a computer science background or they don't have a psychology background, and they ask if they can still be successful. And as you mentioned, Leonard, I think it's very important that we emphasize that yes, you can be a user researcher. There are loads of transferable skills that you get, like students get in any program. Like curiosity, I think, as you mentioned, it's like one of the most important one. But even if we look into like research method or research question, there are a lot of things that you learn in your psychology program or a computer science program, or even in your anthropology program, that you can still use them in your job as a user researcher. And there are going to be some skills that you may need to do some training, and thankfully there are loads of resources available these days to get those kind of component, those skill set that might be missing in your profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I would add also that most degrees have a degree of flexibility and plasticity sort of built in. Like you might be doing course projects or semester projects. You'll be doing a bachelor project, a master project. There are lots of opportunities for actually shaping your degree in the direction that you're interested in, right? And
Exactly.
it's like the earlier you know roughly what direction you want to take after your university program, the better you can shape your university years to work for you, right? Although sometimes we don't know, or we end up going in a different direction. Said the guy who did a master's in geology and ended up working with computer games. Hey, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think Andres, that's really important because what you mentioned in terms of shaping their portfolio. Because sometimes I get people who apply to our university or my program, and then they tell me that they're really passionate about games or games user research, and they want me to be their supervisor. And I look at their profile and I see that during their undergrad and graduate degree, let's say if they're coming for as a PhD student or applying to become a PhD student, I see that like they work as, I don't know, computer network engineer or system administrator. So I see no connection into what they are telling me, that not suddenly they are interested in games and HCI. And that's usually, it's possible to change. Like I did, as you mentioned, like my background is also not necessarily game, but I think there should be at least some indication through the assignments that you did, the master thesis project that you completed, the course project that you completed, that shows you are actually interested in HCI or in games. Yeah. So that's something that I've seen some students just say that they are really passionate without having any evidences to show that passion, and that's something that we usually look for when we want to hire someone.
You mentioned also working with the industry during your degree years. How important is this? Like, is this something that is like, is this an absolute must have for a newly graduated bachelor or master student to have experience working with the actual games industry? Leonard, Pelsman, what do you guys think?
I think it helps to be exposed to a work environment either way. I actually prefer working with PhD students that have had some exposure to a regular work environment, regular hours, just the way company culture works and these types of things. It's sometimes really hard when you're always on your own schedule at the university. You can be really focused and you're sort of entering this weird meta space of it's just you absorbing knowledge and applying that knowledge, and the whole like professionalism might not necessarily be a part of going through that undergraduate degree or whatever it is that you're going through. So in that regard, it is, I think, very helpful to have been exposed to a professional company environment and just to be able to understand how companies work, and specifically understanding deadlines. I think that's sort of a key thing. Deadlines are really difficult because a lot of times students work with deadlines differently than if there's an actual stakeholder buy-in and the client needs something delivered, or the team that you're working with needs something done by a certain time. That's just non-negotiable, right? So it's much more stringent in industry to be doing that. And I think you've probably experienced that in a similar way, Anders, in your work with industry partners, right? And I would add to that also that as long as we are at a university, there is a certain focus on marks and grades, right? You want to get as high a mark for something. Your work should be as perfect as possible. Whereas within an industry context, we often need to work to a certain standard,
but we don't necessarily want to go beyond that standard. Like, you don't get as many points for delivering something that is above and beyond, right? It's more important that you actually deliver your work at a specified standard within the budget and the timeline, right? So I would agree with you, Leonard, that having some sort of exposure to the industry during your degree years will be extremely beneficial. Things like teamwork also, but I think these days, ideally, all students should pick up quite a lot of teamwork skills. So I would also highlight that I think communication skills is something that you learn quite a lot of working with the industry. That's not to say you don't learn communication skills within a university framework, but you learn different ways of communicating and being exposed to a game company or any company within the creative industries, really, or even health or information systems will teach you a lot about how to engage with different stakeholders. And it is something that newly graduate students often lack are the soft skills, the teamwork skills, the communication skills, the management skills, because these things are not explicitly taught at a university. Most universities, they expect students to pick these things up, right? So that's definitely something to be aware of also. Petsman, anything to add on this about
I just wanted
interfacing with you?
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to just kind of summarize maybe and go a little bit high level. So I think the key here is, looking for opportunities while there's, at university to engage with, real projects. And then in each of them, something you mentioned, Andres, kind of to look at that portfolio that the students are building. So make sure that there is a story, there is a connection that makes sense to tell. And also the skills that students gain from this engagement, although maybe in a first look may not be directly applicable to games user research, but there is always those transferable skills that whether it would be more on a kind of a professional development or might be a skill that you connect with the stakeholder and then you kind of become better at maybe running interview sessions because you kind of maybe talk to many people. Or it might be, you analyze some data from a biology degree, but the data may be around fishes, and then same analysis, maybe same way of statistics may apply to data from humans.
Exactly.
Stats,
stats, right? I mean, yeah. True. So very true.
Like looking for those transferable skills and then making sure to be able to tell that story when applying for user research position. I think that's quite an advantage to have.
What about data skills? How essential? Both on the academic side and the industry side, we are increasingly using telemetry data to support user research. How much do you need to know about behavioral telemetry, about the ability to analyze behavioral data as someone trying to spring for a junior user researcher type position?
I don't think it's just telemetry data or just behavioral data. It's attitudinal data and other types of data. That you'd be working with, right? So I think in general, the skill that you need, the data analysis skill, that's a good one to have. So is any method skill, right? Like knowing how to execute a method, which is part of what you get from these degree programs. But it's also something that can be trained on the job. A lot of the stuff can be learned using available resources as long as you know what you're looking for. The problem that you could see there sometimes is that you don't necessarily understand the underlying reason for why you're doing that, right? So you're you're doing something without actually knowing what you're testing for. Like if you do significance testing or something like that, like you might be doing it because somebody told you to do it, and that's the way to validate your research question, but it's not the same as knowing when to select what statistical test to provide additional proof for your research question. And on top of that, stakeholders might not even know what that means, and it might not be as important as telling a good story. But this is kind of, I think, we were edging again on this idea of you have to be ethical as a user researcher. So you have to have that ethos personally of saying, you know, this is why my data sticks and this is why my data works. And I didn't just make that up, but it is data focused. So I think taking away from that telemetry question, Anders, it is that you need to be a trustworthy, reliable data processor. You need to understand how to process data in any form and how to make sense of it. And I think that's a really, that's a core skill that
I was going to say exactly.
Method, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the same thing, that kind of in terms of the foundational skill to me is to kind of understand what sort of questions can be answered with what sort of data. And I think that's a really key thing to know. And I see even some seasoned researcher making some of those mistakes. For example, you are looking at like some preferences among like options between users, but ended up like, let's say, relying on qualitative data from like a small number of participants. So that's that's not uncommon to see even in professional setting. But I think that's a foundational skill that anyone, especially getting into the industry, need to be very comfortable with in kind of understanding what data type can be used to answer what type of question.
Yeah, I would add things like critical thinking. Like you really need to be able to think very critically about your hypotheses, your exploratory data questions, and your methodology. Like, what can we actually say, given that we have run this investigation? What investigation do I need to run in order to make these and these conclusions? I often find that something that can be lacking is the ability to sort of critically plan an entire set of experiments. Like really saying, all right, if we want to go here, that's fine. What is the 6-month program of play tests and UX tests and behavioral telemetry analysis that we need to embark on in order to really be able to say something about whether our users are enjoying this level, whether they can navigate it, etc., right? And that takes iteration. You need to run tests and run analysis multiple times, again and again, and then you sort of slowly start building up that sort of feeling for what can we support with what type of data, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, can I ask something that some people might be wondering as they're listening to this? Like, how important is it that the university you get a degree from is a prestigious university?
I don't think it matters much. And again, I think the degree is really just a validation of your skills. And it's, I think it's much more important to work with someone that, can train you in that skill, right? So it might be that you're looking at, okay, here's somebody that has HCI experience, so I can pick that up easily. It would be very different from working with somebody that is a clinical psychologist, right, and might not even be a media psychologist or something like that. Yeah. And you'd still pick up valuable skills, but it would be much harder to transfer those skills later on to your day-to-day job. So I do think it helps working sort of with an academic team or a faculty or a school or something where you know that the people working there and teaching these classes have some experience working with games or have published some papers. So I think a good way, if you're kind of headed towards grad school and you're trying to investigate these areas, is to check out what conferences these people publish in. You can look at things like Kai Play or, like some game related journals. And just look at, okay, this is the type of people that are publishing in this field, that are obviously interested in this types of games user research. And okay, maybe there's something here for me where I can have a little bit more focused training. Again, it's not a deal breaker. I think you can still easily go to traditional programs and adjust your skills. With the right kind of effort, everything's possible. But if you're looking for a smoother experience, then it might make sense to aim it a little bit more at that.
Yeah, I mean this idea about sort of checking out your professors prior to starting a program, or even doing it if you already find yourself in a program, then try to figure out who at this institution actually does the kind of work that I'm interested in, or has the skills and knowledge that I'm interested in acquiring. Like I find most university lecturers and professors, they're usually fairly happy when a student knocks on their door saying, "Hey, I think your research is really fascinating. Can I learn something from you?" Like most people say, "Hey, okay, fair enough, yeah, come on in." Right? It's awesome. We unfortunately are running out of time, way too fast as usual. Any last comments? Any final pieces of advice that we can provide here?
I just wanted to probably mention again the variety of resources that are out there, from these mini courses, certificates that companies such as, let's say, Google or other institutions offer, from the on YouTube. You can probably find hours and hours of video related to user research on the IGDA Games Research and User Experience YouTube page. There are tons of videos there. That's an amazing resource for anyone who wants to kind of learn more about it. Not the cool thing about those videos, particularly from the SIG, is that they're not only focused on method. There are many talks that are from companies who present their approach in different things, and I think that it could be really valuable to see how different company approach user research.
Very true.
So I think that's something I would suggest. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight again, what Andres, you mentioned earlier about that connections in portfolio and the story building, because again, I've seen sometimes CVs and requests that comes to me and like, oh, we are really interested in user research, and I look at it and then I see they just completed 2 months ago they completed a Cisco networking certificate. It's like, okay, if you were really interested in user research, why did you just did a Cisco certificate 2 months ago? Or you probably should have done a UX probably research certificate from Google than a networking certificate if you wanted to do user research. So I would, like many people, I would assume pay attention to those when they are hiring. Those are the indication of that interest in the subject and training. Yeah,
exactly. I agree with you. Our community is pretty wonderful in that over the past decade we've developed so many videos and presentations and presentations from the summits. The IDA Special Interest Group also has a mentorship scheme, a very, very friendly Discord. I mean, it's just a really wonderful community. We have some amazing colleagues, and there is a mass of videos and podcasts and articles and blog posts were not out there, which is just really, really good
And books.
Good and books also. And books, yeah. No, it's just really
GURbook.com.
Anyway, we are way out of time now. So this has been incredibly interesting. There's heaps more to dive into on this topic. For more on games user research, as Lennart just subtly pointed out, go to GURbook.com and check out the book, which is a community book also. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening in today. We hope it was enjoyable and informative, and we wish you all the best.